The Entrepreneur's Library, Episode 54.
Welcome to the Entrepreneur's Library, the only book-centric podcast that reviews all the top-selling business books and shares authors' perspective firsthand. This is your resource to finding the next great book that will enable you to grow personally and professionally. Welcome your host, Wade Danielson.
Thank you for joining us on the EL. Today we have Micah Yosts, author of Rhythm. Welcome, Micah, and thank you for joining us on the Entrepreneur's Library.
Hey, man, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. Will you take just a moment to introduce yourself and tell us just a little bit about you personally?
Yeah, you bet. So I live in Omaha, Nebraska, right in the middle of the country. And I work with an awesome group of creatives at a company called Elevate, where we do digital brand and design. And we have a lot of fun doing that, working with companies. And my undergrad is in the arts, and my graduate degree is in business. And so I've spent the past decade kind of working right at that intersection of creativity and innovation and business and where all those things collide.
Perfect. Well, thank you for sharing that. Now let's jump right into your book, Rhythm, which was just made available for purchase on August 23rd, 2014. And Micah, we're going to move quick, but here are some of the top questions our listeners would love to get answered. And the first one is, what was the inspiration behind writing Rhythm?
Yeah, so I was on an airplane a couple of months back flying to Tennessee to speak at a conference called Everywhere Else, which is a entrepreneurship conference. And I was planning on talking about something else, but I have a rhythm of my own of scrubbing my notebook, where I just go back every so often and scrub my notes. And I really came on to this question of what would it look like to really make creativity and innovation consistently executable. How do you make this squishy concept of creativity so much more concrete? And that was really the question I wanted to answer. And out of that came this equation that I write about in the book. And then that kind of turned into my talk that I gave at Everywhere Else conference in Tennessee. And it just spurred a lot of questions and a lot of great conversation at the conference. And so I really felt like I wanted to take it just a little further and try to really address that issue. How do we consistently execute our ideas? And that's where the book came from.
Excellent. So I think one of the questions that our listener would love to get answered when they're about to pick up any book is, what makes it different from others regarding the same topic? So that's what we'd like to ask you.
Yeah, and man, I really set out to make this something different because there are so many books that are on this subject of creativity or innovation because we live in that economy, and I mentioned that in the book. That's the economy we're in now. And so if you get my book, the first thing you'll notice is it's only about 50 pages long. And a lot of people, they notice that right away and they'll ask me about it. And I did that very intentionally. I worked with my editor to whittle this down from about 60,000 words to a 50-page piece. And every time we went through an edit, we would intentionally work with brevity and bring this thing down, try to keep it from creeping up to this giant novel, because I really felt like if I used the right words and communicated with brevity, I could get this point across in 50 pages. And so this is a book that I want people to pick up and read it over the weekend and then just go make stuff happen. This isn't something that I want to take a long time. It's a quick engagement. Jump in, get what you need. It's a field manual to go make stuff happen.
I appreciate that big time, especially in a world where content is everywhere. And so are 300-page books. So something that I can read and then be active on right away is a great resource. So my next question would be, how do you want the reader to engage with your book? Is this a book where they should jump in and jump back out based on different content they're looking to pick up, or should they really start it and read it from front to back?
Yeah, my hope is that this will be a book that you read straight through, front to back, but that you keep with you. At the end of each chapter, I have 5 action points to really help you make something and do something with this book. And like I mentioned earlier, I really want it to be a field manual, something that you reference consistently, that you go back to. It's a quick read. And so I hope that people will keep it in front of them, keep it close. And especially in those times that we hit in our work where we feel like things just aren't flowing and the ideas aren't coming, we're having difficulty bringing something to market or bringing something to light, that you'll go back to this book and it'll really give you that push and the help just to get over the hump and keep things moving and keep things flowing. So I hope it's a field manual that people reference often.
All right, Micah, now that we know a little bit of the background behind your book, we're coming up to my favorite part. And that's the part where I'm going to hand over the mic and really let your book shine, really let you just tell us what it's all about from A to Z.
Yeah, so this whole book rallies around this one equation. This equation that I came up with is influence plus rhythm times action equals creative. And I define a creative as someone who consistently executes ideas. So this would not be someone who has an idea and makes something happen. This would be someone who consistently delivers. And I think specifically for an entrepreneurship audience, this is so key, right? That we don't just have one idea, turn it into something, and that's it. We're all under pressure to consistently bring new things to market, new ideas to the table, especially those of us that are going through funding rounds. It's time to put up or shut up, and we have to consistently execute and bring new things to light. And so that's what I define as a creative. And so this equation, influence plus rhythm times action, is what gets us there. And that's what the book is structured on. So I start by talking about influences, and I really take people through this idea that our ideas happen way before we get to the whiteboard. What influences us in our past, what influences us during our work, is really what brings us to our ideas. I write a lot about my grandfather in the book, who is a poet and a philosopher, and he lives in a small college town, and he walks the alleys of this small town every day with his notebook and his pencil, and that's where all of his poetry comes out of. And I asked the question in the book, how different would those poems be if instead of walking the alleys of this small town America, what if he was walking the alleys of inner city Chicago? I think his poetry would be so much different based on that significant change in influence. And it's the same for us. The ideas that we're able to have are going to be significantly different depending on the influences in our life. And so we need to curate those influences, just like you might curate a library or a museum. You have to think about what's influencing us and what's bringing about our ideas. I move on to talk a little bit about this idea of rhythm after I talk about influences. And rhythm is so important, it's became the title of the book. When I talk about rhythm, I talk about this idea of routine, of consistently doing the same things. And I say that doing the same things will bring the same results. A lot of people, I think when they hear routine, especially people that are creatives, they have an adverse reaction to it because they think, oh, this is going to put me in a box or some type of mundane structure. But in the book, I actually walk through some of the most significant creatives and innovators in history. And I walk through the routine that each of them had. And it's really interesting to look at everyone from Leonardo da Vinci to Steve Jobs and the significant routine and structure that they had to their life that helped them bring about their ideas. Rhythm or routine is what brings about the ease for us to get things out. It takes away the roadblocks to bringing our ideas to light. And it's why it's kind of the secret sauce to this whole deal. And it's so important. As I mentioned, it became the title of the book. And so I talk about, influence plus rhythm brings us our ideas. And then I finish up the book talking about action. Action is the wild card here. It's not just added in the equation. Action is a multiplier. Even poor ideas can become great if we become really good at execution. I call it a bias towards action in the book. And we walk through this idea that great innovators have this bias towards shipping ideas, moving things forward, bringing things to light. Ideas, honestly, are worthless by themselves. Without really good action, ideas are nothing. They have nothing to them, no value. And so even a marginal idea, if you execute it effectively, really, really well, it can become significant and have value. And that much more great ideas executed really well can have great value. And so then to close the book, I just kind of walk through some specific examples of looking at people and their innovations and how this equation looked for them and how it worked for them. And that's what the book looks like.
So thank you for that review. And this next question can be fairly difficult, but I want to ask it no matter what. And that's if the reader / listener, especially the one listening right now, who's an entrepreneur or soon to be entrepreneur who loves to read, if they can only take one concept, principle, or action item out of your entire book, everything that you just talked about, what would you want that to be?
Yeah, it's rhythm. great things happen when you get into a rhythm. That's really the core of this whole thing.
Excellent. Okay, very good. Is rhythm, is another word for that? Do you hear it in the business world, flow, or is that a different concept?
No, it's similar, although when you really get into the psychological research behind flow, it's a bit different, but rhythm is what is the precursor to it. If you can get into a good rhythm, that's what enables, in turn, flow and this ability of ideas to flow freely. So rhythm is really the key and the structure behind getting into flow.
Okay, perfect. That was a great way that you just described that. Micah, do you have a favorite quote from your book? This can be one that you wrote that you think maybe would resonate with individuals, or one that maybe your audience has told you so far that has resonated.
Yeah, there's a really good one. It's in the book. It's not my own, but it is in the book. And it's from the 20th century poet W.H. Auden, who says, "Routine in an intelligent man is a sign of ambition." And we often think about routine, or as I call it, rhythm, as the opposite of ambition, or something mundane, but it's really not. And in the book, as I mentioned, we take a look at some of these famous innovators in history and their religious routine. And so I really like that quote: "Routine in an intelligent man is a sign of ambition."
So, Micah, with some of the things that you're talking about, I think it's going to help create a paradigm shift for a lot of entrepreneurs who are listening, or that ones that don't have a rhythm that are going to then seek, a way to get that rhythm that you're talking about. And so, the next question is: is there another book that you've read, and it can really be on anything, it can be in business or not, but that has really created a paradigm shift for you and impacted your life in great ways?
Yeah, man, that's such a hard question, because there's so many great books out there. I'm an avid reader, and there's so many we could reference. And I think that as people read, hopefully they'll pick up my book. If they don't, they'll still hear this concept, and I think they'll start to see this concept of rhythm and routine in everything that they read. But one of the books where it's really highlighted strongly, and a book that's really impacted me, is just a classic by Jim Collins, Good to Great. And every time I talk to somebody who's just starting into business school or just starting to read, I always ask them, have you read Good to Great? And if they say no, I say, you got to start there. So that would probably be my recommendation.
Perfect. It's funny that you say that, because I was just going back and forth on our blog talking with someone about that book. And I completely agree. Matter of fact, I'm hoping to get Jim on. And what was the other book that I read? But I know he's got 4 or 5 books: Built to Last and
Yep.
Good to Great.
Yep.
Both really, really excellent books. So for sake of time, do you have one other one that you could recommend that that had a huge impact on your life?
Yeah, well, I would say, there's a few other even authors that, especially on the subject of creativity, that are awesome. And I would definitely recommend Austin Kleon. He's written Show Your Work, which is just a really, really great read, and a few others. I like Austin because he writes with brevity. It's easy to approach his books, but they're really dense with great content, and he's just a great artist and writer in and of himself. So if people wanted to kind of follow a great creative and innovator who's writing great things on entrepreneurship and creativity, I would definitely recommend Austin Kleon.
Perfect. Well, Micah, before we depart, can you recommend the best way for our listeners to get more information on you and your book, Rhythm?
Yeah, so the book is available for download right now on Kindle, and it'll be coming up closer to the holiday season in paperback. And if you want to follow me, you can go to micahyost.com, and I blog there regularly, and you can get more info on myself.
Perfect. Well, Micah, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your book with us.
Yeah, man, it was great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks again for listening in today. If you would like to get your hands on Rhythm or any of the other resources mentioned by Micah, just look at the show notes at the elpodcast.com.
Looking for your next book idea? Head over to the elpodcast.com, where Wade shares his amazing resource, the top 10 business books recommended by over 500 entrepreneurs, with you for free. That's the elpodcast.com. Till the next time, keep it on the EL.